Get the face mask. We hella militant from sunset to break fast. I'm not these rappers, you don't really know me, this Jack mode. Frost code, never left, I've been by the back though. If a rapper do too much on the cam, we go off the cam, bring it right to him. That's instant, not talking on the ground. Welcome everybody, and we are here with episode 4 of the Palestine podcast 530 NorCal, and I am so excited to introduce to you our first and very esteemed guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Sang Kill, and I'm a professor at San Jose State University. I am currently under Article 19 of my collective bargaining agreement dismissal for supporting my students against a genocide of the Israeli government toward the Palestinians.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you for being here. And that's a great introduction to exactly who you are. And so as we build up to that, because we're definitely going to let everyone know more about what you just discussed and how you got there. So let's get back to the beginning. So I'd like to just ask you about your beginnings, and what you'd like to share about that and what built you up from that to Palestine solidarity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, people's origin stories about how they get into social justice can go back into childhood. I won't go back that far, but I will say that I was a very dedicated student activist since I was about 16 years old. And it continued through college, and it really expanded when I went to graduate school for my master's in religious studies at Arizona State University, where I got involved in the struggles around the border and border militarization and the killing deserts that our government created to try to prevent immigration or enable cheap immigration.
And I was going to say that leads into a lot of your feelings about ICE too, because we've spoken about that, and I see. I think it's kind of right, like natural when you're involved with the indigenous struggle that you kind of just align with those things, and we see the issue with those narratives as well, and with complacency. So thank you for your struggle early on.
Exactly, yeah. So I shifted my studies towards the border militarization, and particularly how the media covered border militarization, with my eye on the white supremacist reproductions of how brown border crossers are constructed. But not only that, but I was also interested in the way whiteness was constructed along the news media coverage of the border, because I was seeing the white supremacy of border vigilantes, politicians who aligned with them. And now we're seeing that take the national stage with Trump. So I see very much a parallelism between the white supremacist groups that converged in Arizona around 2004, as well as MAGA, Project 2025, and Project Esther that we see now with Trumpism and MAGA. So I hope the same thing happens to Trump and his cronies as to what happened to the border vigilantes that created a supergroup called the Minutemen down in the border in the early 2000s, which is that they infighted and imploded on themselves. So keep up the work, everybody, with bothering them with the Epstein files and everything else, because if you keep poking the bear, they'll just tear at each other and hopefully take care of themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, we already see that kind of, don't we, right? I mean, I've never seen more of a side of Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, right? What a complete flip. Not to say that I'm aligned with her personally, but just saying I understand how it just goes to show that people that are big in power, that a lot of folks in our country think have a lot of knowledge about these struggles. We come to find out that after they hit the center stage, they weren't really as educated as those of us that lived through it in any capacity. And that's scary, because they've got like this, like you said, in comparison to the border groups now. And I didn't know much about that back then. I was still young in my learning journey, even though I was doing like music at Rutgers back in 2004. I didn't know what you were talking about just yet, but I do understand the parallel that you gave, like now that it's larger on a federal level. And I hope that we definitely see the same aggressive response that you described with those on that larger scale. So I want to get into, so before you were a professor at San Jose, what was like your main passion, and like what was your career at that time? What were you involved in?
So I did my master's and PhD in Arizona for about a decade. So I was a student activist mostly, and did some academic work on the side. And so a lot of my work was around coalition building.
Okay.
So I started this group, ironically, called Local to Global Justice with Kirsten Sinema, the former senator of Arizona, for fuck's sake. And yeah, we used to be politically aligned. I even canvassed for her when she was a Green Party candidate, clean elections, a run. And I saw how the political system corrupts people, and people accept that corruption when her career took a nosedive toward the centrist and the centrist. So that was a really interesting learning experience. But yeah, so Local to Global Justice was like 1-year event at Arizona State University, where we pulled all the left of center, basically, groups. Create coalitions where we all converged one time of year, where we would information exchange and do trainings, direct actions, and things of that nature. So it was a way in which we could try to push against the red state, basically, that Arizona was, highly visibly white supremacist, to try to create a more progressive environment in Arizona, which sometimes it, I think, did help a bit. It still goes on without me, which is wonderful. So that was like over 20 years ago, and they're still doing it, even though I co-founded this as a graduate student. So that's really great to hear. And yeah, so my experience before being a professor was being a kick-ass student activist, doing statewide coalition work in Arizona.
Well, your position is noted. We know we got it on record. We know that you were the co-founder for sure, and so grateful that you did co-found something like that in Arizona, because that is a place that needs it. And I'll share with you briefly just to connect. Back in 2018, I had worked with Y Islam, who worked under the ICNA umbrella, and they do like a lot of help, with situations, Middle Eastern and different families out here. And so we wanted to. They went on a road trip that went into Las Vegas, where I was at that time. And they went through Arizona, and I remember it was like 2018. It was so scary to see what was happening and how they were treating people around the mosques in that area. Actually, back then, I think it was more surprising than now, because things weren't so open as they are now. But I mean, to those of us who's lived it, I mean, it's like, me personally, it's not surprising. But I just mean, like, to the public in 2018, those were normal.
Oh, yeah, I mean, after 9/11, the first Islamophobic death was in Arizona, and unfortunately, it was a Sikh person. He's not of Islam, right?
Yeah.
Misidentified and shot and killed in Arizona, and that was one of the first casualties.
I remember hearing about that.
So Arizona. So the white supremacy in Arizona is off the hook. It continues to be off the hook. But what's really tragic is that the platforming that the vigilantes had done back in the early 2000s is now national platforming. And that's why, fighting white supremacy in smaller red states like Arizona is so important, because it does go viral in a sense. It does spread. And now we have this Magalicious moment now that we're all suffering under, where they're going after one identity group after the next. First it was women and their reproductive rights, and then it was immigrants, and now, DC is being occupied, and DC is an historically Black city, and so
it's beyond it's DC being occupied as. But I always worried about DC, because it was one of those things that we used to pick out in conversation, like, because it falls under this different. But why, right? I used to say, like, why? Like, why is it not technically part of a state? How is that? And then, like, one of my friends told me, and I don't know how accurate this is, that, like, people go straight to prison there. I don't know how that works, or if the county jail is like a prison or what it is. It's different. It's very weird, It's
yeah. Weird. I mean, I grew up in DC around the 80s. I'm in my 50s now. So I remember, being in, I grew up in DC. I grew up in Northern Virginia. So my city. And, the Reagan era was very similar to Trumpism in the sense that there was like a lot of neoliberalism and criminalization of people of color going hand in hand.
You are now tuned in to the Palestine podcast, brought to you by High Five Tobacco in Chico, California, a Palestinian-owned business. Please also make sure to check out the Dungeon 530 in downtown and any other Palestinian-owned business to show support and solidarity in the community. Also, remember when showing support and solidarity to include other indigenous families and communities. That includes the Native Americans whose land we sit on, the indigenous Mexica, as well as all of the Caribbean tribes, the Taino being the main thereof, and all indigenous peoples worldwide, from Congo, Sudan, and who are all facing oppression and turmoil from Kashmir and beyond.
Okay, next, I approve this message. Free Palestine!
And all the people that we lost, we gon' gravitate. You can't keep at a pace with me, man, I stay up bagging late. And if we finna hit the lick, unscrew the license plate. I passed dolphin age, rest in peace to legacy. Separate as tenants for them female tendencies. And we don't like to trip, but we reciprocate in energy. I'm too official for my enemies. I sent a rapper to another dimension, hella fast. We everlast, militant army duffel.
And so Reagan did a lot of war on drugs in DC area, and it led to the massive depopulation of African American males between 18 to 35, to the point where it actually reconfigured the gender dynamics of the African American population. That's how many African Americans were just pipelined straight to prison. For things like
it's
drug charges. Yeah, so
it's a pattern. For sure, it's a pattern. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
History repeats itself, and I think things like this, the criminalization of immigrants and trying to create another pipeline to prison, basically, or detention and things like that, are patterns that we've seen before and that we'll see again, unless the left unites and fights more effectively, and that's the test that we have before us now.
Let me ask you this on that note. That actually segued perfectly into the question I was thinking about asking you, which is, how do you feel about minority Americans now, right? That don't, they're like, we're minorities, let's say, but they don't necessarily fall into who Trump's attacking now. Do you feel like their inaction and complacency, as you described earlier, that you experienced in your school years, do you feel that complacency, or that maybe, for example, like I know, and I'll just say it directly, I know a lot of African-American friends of mine who their parents may be citizens and they're citizens, so they don't fall directly into the umbrella of people that's being attacked, and so they may not see it as a direct threat to themselves. What would you say to those people
Yeah,
clear the air?
I do think I live in a bubble because I'm an activist and I surround myself with activists. I know many African Americans, Black activists that are very much a part of resisting these ICE raids. And I know a lot of Asians that are resisting these ICE raids. And because I also live in the Bay Area, I think I have the benefit of having these different racial groups that understand the threat of ICE is a collective threat and not just picking off one group after the other. So because of the bubble that I lived in, the leftist bubble that I lived in, I don't experience that directly. However, I understand that stepping outside the leftist bubble, there is a critique of, let's say, and I can speak for it because this is my identity group, API groups, maybe Asian Pacific Islander groups or Asian groups in particular. My parents are from Korea, that are not seeing the ICE raids be something that directly affects them. But however, reading the room, reading the news, reading what's coming out of the Department of Justice or Department of Homeland Security, they are definitely going to go after Asians.
Oh yeah.
Seeing these raids happen, particularly at nail salons and places like that, where
I'm glad you said that.
Populated by the Asian population workers, and it's getting less mainstream news coverage because it's not a target that they imagine Trump is going after, because Trump really made it sound like he was going after brown undocumented criminal gangsters. But
it's happening. I'm glad you said that. I don't hear many people talk about that. And see, I'm glad that you said that. You really answered the question well. Thank you. And what I got from it is, we need to all be aware. And thank you for understanding. There are folks, for example, like I'm in the 530, which is Wise Palestine Pocket, right? And I'm a little more to the east of you here in NorCal. And there's people of all backgrounds that surprisingly still have very pro MAGA Trump views despite what they're seeing. And when I see that I expect it, I guess, from certain groups, but when it's our groups of people that are being affected, or minority or indigenous groups in general, I feel like there should be an accord and understanding that this is something that could ultimately affect everyone. And you're highlighting that is important, because you're right. It is something that has been a consistent thing, and I don't feel it's getting as much coverage, but it's probably happening more often now than it was then. So
I think the ICE raids are getting so sloppy right now that just everyone's getting picked up. So even U.S. citizens now are being detained for up to like 48 hours, right? And basically disappeared and kidnapped by ICE, as they're sorting through trying to find people that they can actually, detain and deport. So it'll only be a matter of time, especially if they're trying to reach these insane goals of 3,000 people a day, that people who are pro-MAGA will get their constitutional rights trampled on by either ICE raids or some other mechanisms, and they're going to have a little, conversation with themselves about who they voted for and
or what they're standing on now. Yeah,
exactly.
Because it's crazy. Like I don't feel like I go with my birth certificate and social everywhere that me and the kids travel, and I'm a citizen. But knowing that I'm a Palestinian, me and my dad share the same name, and he wasn't born here. Some people are like, wow, that's a crazy dynamic to think about. I'm like, if you're Palestinian right now, or any minority right now for that matter, but, like as a single dad with 2 kids, right, I'm like, man, they could just say, whoops, we thought he was his dad that was born in Gaza. We literally have the same first, middle, last name. So I'm like, I'm keeping my documents with me at all times. But the fact we have to live that way shows, right? I mean, I was born here. And
So the New York Slimes, which is the national newspaper of record, has consistently, decade after decade, equated Palestinians with terrorism. And it did a terrible job with the coverage after October 7 in 2023, yet again, and perpetrating lies that they had to admit to later. So this Islamophobia that Palestinians are feeling, particularly in this most recent genocide that has continued and is reaching, probably over 100,000 people at this moment, is truly acute. And so you do have to be careful, because it very much seems clear to most of us that are reading the paper and understanding what's happening on the ground that our government is being influenced by a foreign power. Money.
Clearly.
And we are complicit in the genocide, and we're feeding it with our guns and weaponry. And Palestinians have to tread extra carefully because of the targeting that they are going to experience, not only in this country, in their own lands and abroad.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, even for me, right? Like as a person in social work, and standing up, being told I have to stand up for constitutional rights, you find that if you do that, quite often there's backlash. So you have to pick your battles. It's a very interesting position to be in, for sure. Like me, I never thought that I'd go back to college. So having chosen to go to college and being at a university in the United States as a born citizen, but of Palestinian descent, and happen to be Muslim, with 2 children, that's really it's strange, for sure. But I don't want to make it too much on me, but it just proved the point that you were speaking on. I wanted to ask this too. So I met you, and I do want to touch a little bit on it. When I met you, it was at the panel in San Francisco. It was you and Dr. Rupa. Can you give me a little bit about how your, I guess, struggles or situations fused, is what I'll call it?
Yeah, Rupa reached out to me through a mutual friend, because Rupa had heard the stories that seemed very similar to her, in the sense that when I was job suspended for Palestine, and I didn't know they planned to try to fire me, and they were just job suspending me, I had no faculty group speak out on my behalf at my campus. So the union stayed silent and is still silent on my campus about my case, even after they went after to fire me, my local union. And then the faculty senate on my campus also continues to be silent about my case and has not said anything. And the Human Rights Institute on my campus has also stayed silent. So no faculty group that I know of yet on my campus has spoken out for me. And unfortunately, Rupa Maria at UCSF She doesn't have the benefit of tenure. I'm a full professor with tenure. She is a part-time faculty, and she's in the University of California system that does not have a faculty union. So she was much more easily fireable for her speech in support of Palestinians and against the genocide. And unfortunately, she had to struggle, like me, with her faculty campus groups to get support. And so we connected over the fact that we had to stand alone, swim upriver as the sole faculty person with no other faculty group helping us on our campus. And that's why we teamed up together.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, what an amazing connection story. It just makes me think of like when I was a Palestinian dad post-divorce in Northern California, right? And just kind of figuring things out. When you have someone that relates to your struggle, that can help you navigate, and you've been through similar things, it really makes an impact. And I could tell just by hearing you both speak that day that you were able to impact each other's stories and how those things align. And by the way, just to make a point, it's on the Palestine Podcast 530. I uploaded the panel last week. It's an amazing panel. So if you guys want to go check that out, you'll get even more information. So as we get like to the back end of our interview here in closing, I guess what I want to ask is more about your present and future stuff. We've really gotten to know who you are. And a lot of where you stand now. So what are the things that you'll be involved in here in the near future? How can people find you? Of course, we'll do a collab post on this as well, but how can people find you or your preferred method of contact? And what are things that you want to get involved in the future in regards maybe activism and just life that you're not involved in yet, but that you're working your way into?
So right now I'm really focused on keeping my job. So that's the thing that's absorbing most of me. And then also, working with my union to make them stronger to fight MAGA. So I did initiate a bylaws change for my union that will go on the assembly floor in October to start a strike fund, because at this point we can't strike for more than a day system-wide, and that's not good enough. And so we need a strike fund in order to be able to strike for a week or more. And my union has been slow to listen to its members on this. And so I initiated a bylaws change. In addition, I have to do a public hearing. I chose the public hearing route since it's an academic freedom issue over my firing. And so I'll have that public hearing next month, and I'll keep you and your viewers up to date because I plan for it to be a public hearing. It hasn't been confirmed, but it should be open to all. And I'm asking for a Zoom public hearing so that anyone can come and support me. And so hopefully I'll get my requests fulfilled. I to mop the floor with San Jose State University over this because they have zero case against me. Basically, it's, again, a MAGA-licious case they have against me. And we know that MAGA is just full of gaslighting and lies. And that's where I'm standing with San Jose State University on this. And again, I'm speaking as an individual, not as an employee of San Jose University.
Absolutely.
On this one. But yeah, I definitely intend to mop the floor with my public hearing and win that. And then beyond that, I'm just going to keep on doing whatever I can in the capacity that I have as this, professor under fire.
Yeah.
Speak out for Palestine, to speak out against ICE, and to speak out against MAGA and its evil doings to the best of my ability, and to organize with other groups, faculty and community groups, as much as I possibly can, in order to make sure that I follow my moral compass.
Absolutely.
Just to speak out, unite, and fight.
And I think, you know what, thank you for such an amazing finale. And I'll say this, it's important for all of us. We all, people that say, hey, of course, right? Of course we love our children. Of course we love the future. But our behavior has to think for the future. And sometimes when we are scared or complacent, we're not thinking or giving those individuals that are innocent beings now a voice later. So we have to make sure that we prepare the stage for that. And you are certainly preparing the stage for your students, for their kids, for the future of not only the university, but like you said, the union has to create ways for people to be fair. it's not fair if people don't have a way to do something that they want to do, like strike for more than a day. So thank you, for sharing this. It's been truly inspirational. And if you need someone there with microphones in person, if they deny the Zoom request, that we'll pop up for you. So let me know. I actually love San Jose. I went there one time. It was so beautiful. So give me a reason to take the kids. We'll be that. Can you give a
so much for your solidarity. Thanks for recording the talk that Rupa and I gave. That's really touching. It was fun to do with Rupa, and thanks for this particular podcast as well. I appreciate you doing it. I think spreading the message about what's happening to Palestine under a different variety of venues like this is really important, and we have to do that kind of underground work to get the word out about what's going on. So I appreciate your efforts.
No, thank you. And as a final point, I did this because it was necessary. Like you said, public radio here denied me as a Palestinian, but Democracy Now! Has a platform. The Quaker settler colonialists hiding behind fake Palestinian charities, even after being exposed, have a platform, but I don't have a platform. So we made a platform because we're Palestinians, and that's what we're going to do. And shout out to, by the way, let me not forget, High Five Tobacco and Mike for giving me this platform, for helping us and giving us the tools that we need and the ability to do it. Thank you so much, Gil, for being here with us, for sharing your story, for sharing your future inspirations. I'm grateful to know you, and I'm very honored to have had you as a guest on our show today.
Likewise. Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
I've never been a coward or had many excuses. I was in the projects, in the hallways with the blueprints. When we leave the scene of the lick, don't leave a shoe print. Every time a rapper talks shit, I be like, who him? Analyze a profile, got an X-file on all of them. Have somebody get inside of space on the cruise ship. International waters, we're here to really do this. Pistol whip will make them tone deaf and kill excuses. Nomad in the hood, cross country, I keep a go pass. Stay inside my zone, ride slow, and then I